You are listening to Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Welcome to this retreat of Lent 2023. The retreat subject, as it has been announced, it is about the Gospel of the last Wednesday, Ash Wednesday. So it will be about prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Those three exercises that we are supposed to do during Lent, exercises for our spiritual body. So it's like we do exercises for our physical body, we do sports, so we need also spiritual exercises to master our spiritual body and to make it grow. And so these are the ones that every Lent the Church proposes to pray more, to do almsgiving more, and to fast. Now this retreat will be a bit different from the others that we are used to. I speak for roughly half an hour of each theme, and on between there used to be the Rosary, the Marian Mysteries. We won't have the Rosary because there is nobody to pray it. We have only two technicians that managed to come, Alex and Reno. And the people that was supposed to pray the Rosary, they couldn't come because of this big snow last night. And so the format will be, I'll preach about prayer, this first talk, and roughly half an hour or so. And then we'll have 5-7 minutes of pause. We'll be listening to music, and you have some time to ruminate about what I have said. And then we go to the next talk that will be about almsgiving, and the last one will be fasting. We won't celebrate the Mass at the end of this retreat as you used to be at 12:30, because we don't have that half an hour interval for the Rosary after each talk. So if you remember well, this Gospel, it says, "And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." So what Jesus wants to say, I say that this gospel somehow said as an exhortation. It's not really an exhortation for praying, fasting, and almsgiving, because it says the wrong reason for doing the right thing. So in doing the right thing for the wrong reason. So what Jesus was criticizing, especially the Pharisees, the chief priests, the scribes, because they were praying and they were fasting and they were giving alms, but they were doing it for the wrong reason. They are using the people as a means and not an end in themselves. They were using the people as a means to have more popularity, to have more fame, and so that's the wrong reason. But it's interesting that so this backfires in a way, because it says why you shouldn't do it. But it doesn't say this gospel, then it says you should do it. You, for praying, well, instead of praying street corners for everybody to see, go into your room, not even to church, go into your room, and in your room you pray, and God knows that you pray. Only Him knows that you pray. So, but it doesn't exhort you to pray. It only tells you go and pray, but it doesn't tell you the positive reason for praying. It tells you why not to pray. It tells you the wrong reason for praying. But then it tells you pray, but it doesn't tell you the positive reason for praying. And that's the problem about using this gospel for exhortation of the people of God to pray, to give alms, and to fast. And but now it comes to my mind, you see, the context when Jesus said this gospel is completely different from our context. Now precisely what the society tells us is when you pray, go into your room. So society agrees with Jesus. Go into your room, don't pray in street corners. Don't practice your faith in public. Your faith should be a private thing. So don't show that you are a Christian. That's your own business, and do that in secret, so almost clandestine. See, when Jesus said this gospel at the time, the whole society was religious. So being religious in a religious society, you are showing off. But now probably it's the opposite. Now probably it's the opposite. So everything is relative. We should read the gospel in context. Now, we Portuguese, we like to go in procession. For me, going on a procession, it's like a manifestation of your faith publicly. Some people don't like it. Some people might feel ashamed of doing it. And what Jesus said to those, if you are ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you. So now, seeing somebody praying in public, it's not a bad thing. I don't think anybody would pray in public. We did a rosary, we prayed in public not long ago. In October, we went to a street corner, precisely. We, in Radio Maria, we went to a street corner, and there we prayed the rosary. We did not do it to show off. We did it precisely as a manifestation of our faith, as a public manifestation of our faith, and somehow as an evangelization. I give you this example. I'm a runner and I like to run, but sometimes from time to time, because of the weather, I cannot run. But when I see people running, for me it's an exhortation that I should run too. When you see somebody practicing sports, it is somehow an exhortation for you that you also should practice sports for your health. So remember that there was not long ago when Notre Dame, when this big cathedral in Paris, this beautiful Gothic cathedral was burning, there were young people with the rosary in their hands, surrounding the cathedral and praying. Were they showing off? No, they were precisely being brave. Now, if you pray in public, you are not showing off. You are being brave. So it depends on the context. But anyway, that's just the gospel is still valid, the gospel of Jesus. And you might sometimes, in some context, you might be still showing off. But most, you do good things in public, you are evangelizing because in somehow you are doing what Jesus said. Well, you are a light of the world, and the light is supposed to be seen so that the people, when they see your good deeds, they praise God. And in this case, in a non-religious, this gospel is valid for a religious society, but in a non-religious society as ours, pray in public if you are brave enough. to pray in public, you are evangelizing. So that's okay. But there is another thing that in the broad meaning, is practicing your religion. You know, you go to mass and you go to confession and you do all sorts of things that you might do them, and those things don't touch your life. Sometimes, you know, what is called a practicing Catholic is many times one that goes to the sacraments, that goes to church, but you can still do it, and your life is unchanged. What I mean to say, I say it with two stories. There is this Muslim guy with a dagger is persecuting another friend of his or an enemy, and he's going after him with his dagger. But then he hears from the minaret that it's time to pray, so he stops. He doesn't persecute the other anymore. He puts his mat on the floor and he starts praying. And when the prayer is over, he grabs the dagger and continues to run after his enemy. See, this is sort of, you might laugh about it, but you see, well, those are the Muslims. What about the Catholics? Same thing. Give you another example. There is this guy, well, two friends, they meet, and one said to the other, you have sold your old car, but you sold it for an exorbitance. That car was not valuable. You sold it for too much money to a friend of ours. You deceived him, you cheated him. No, I didn't, he says the other. Well, I did business, I did a good business, was a good deal. Well, a good deal, but you are Catholic. Don't you go to confession? What do you tell the priest when you go to confession? Oh, I tell my sins, not my business. So this was a sinful business, but he doesn't see it. He sees it at the business. So you see, like some practicing that is mostly going to church and going to Sunday Mass and pray and then you have your life. The life doesn't touch your religious practice. The religious practice doesn't influence your life. So it's like the two rails of the train, the two tracks. They never meet each other. They are always there to each other, but they never meet each other. So they don't influence each other. They are parallel. And so many people have these parallel lives. They have a practice that doesn't influence their lives and a life that doesn't influence their practice. So you practice religion, I always say that. Practicing religion, you don't practice it in church, you practice in your life. The Word became flesh, and we were saved when the Word became flesh. You will be saved when the Word of God becomes flesh of your flesh, when it becomes your own behavior. So that's, you will be saved. That you will find health and salvation is when the Word turns into flesh of your flesh. And the sacraments and going to church and prayer, those are means. You don't do that by itself. You don't do it as an end in itself. Those are means that should help you. Indeed, they help you. But what's more important is by their fruits you know them. All this going to church on Sunday, all this praying, and all sorts of novenas and all sorts of things that you might do, even fasting. Now there is very much in fashion, fasting for 40 days, just drinking water and eating bread. Well, all those things, those are means. They are means to make you a better person, but then you'll be judged by your fruits, not by your practices. So the important thing is that those things incarnate, they change your behavior. So, what in a broad meaning, what is prayer? Prayer is loving God. So praying is a relationship. You establish a relationship with God, and remember that in our religion, in Christianity, we have a personal God. Personal God, that means a person is a person to whom you can relate, that you should relate, a person that you love. And if you love somebody, you never relate to that person, what sort of love is that one? Because the contrary of love is not hatred. The contrary of love is really not relating at all. Is behaving as if we didn't exist. You exist, but you don't exist to me. So it is like if you didn't exist. Ignoring a person is worse than hating that person. And so many times we don't hate God, but we ignore him. We know that God exists, but we live as if he didn't exist. Why? Because we never relate to him. And how can you relate to him? Prayer. There's no other way. To relate to God is by praying to him. And is the exercising of being a temple of the Holy Spirit. Being a temple of the Holy Spirit. I like this expression of Paul, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. That's why to pray, we don't need to go to church. We can pray at the top of a mountain, we can pray at the side of a river, we can pray anywhere, and in our room too, because praying is you go inwards. God is outside you, transcends everything that you see. There is God in everything that you see. That would be the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. And then, but God is also inside you, and that would be the prayer, the contemplative prayer. So God is immanent and transcendent, is inside you, so you just have to go inwards. Just go inwards. And exercise you being a temple. And remind yourself of God being inside you. But I would say that in paraphrasing the Pope Benedict XVI, he says that when you pray, you carve a space inside yourself. It's like carving that temple, and that temple has to be built. In essence, you are a temple, but you have to build it. You are a rock where you can build a temple. But you have to do it. You have to carve inside yourself. And it comes to my mind, the churches in Lalibela in Ethiopia, where I was for 7 years. And these churches are something, the world doesn't know them. They all speak about the ones in Jordan, those facades, Petra. In Petra, you see the facade of a church. The facade, just one facade of a temple. But in Lalibela, you see the four facades of a church. And inside, so it was carved from outside like a sculpture, and then it was carved inside. So those churches are a single stone. A single stone that is carved from the outside in the format of a church, the facades, the four facades, and then carved through, and then you draw your door, and then you carve the door to carve the space inside the church. That's only exists in the world in Ethiopia. Should be one of the marvels of the world, but they are not known. They are not known for many people. So when you pray, you do this. You carve inside yourself a space for God, a space that is there, and you are there, and you relate to him. All you need is silence. All you need is silence. If you go after work, you go home, first thing you do is switch on the TV, then you You do away with your silence. Because God will never shout louder than all the other voices. You have to shut all the voices if you want to hear God inside your consciousness. So all you need to pray is silence. Silence is prayer, and prayer is silence. It is also an exercise of freedom. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. So, when do you exercise these? When do you practice these? You practice these by praying. So, you love God above everything. This is exercising your freedom. Exercising freedom from. There is no freedom for if there is no freedom from. But most young people nowadays, they speak of freedom for. Freedom to do whatever I please. But you don't really do whatever you please. The young rich ruler wanted to follow Jesus. He wanted to follow Jesus. Was he free to follow Jesus? No. Why wasn't he free to follow Jesus? Because he was not freed from wealth. He was attached to wealth. So he was dependent on wealth. He would like to follow Jesus, but he had no freedom to follow Jesus. So was he really free to do whatever he pleased? No. He pleased to follow Jesus because he came up to Jesus. Was not Jesus going to him? He came up to Jesus. He came and met Jesus. So somehow he wanted to follow Jesus. But then he found himself unable to do what he pleased because he was attached to wealth. He was attached to wealth. So the most important thing is to be free from. When you are free from, then you are free for. But the first, what you have to work out. You see, young people look at freedom as something that you don't have to work it out. It's not like the Jews or the slaves that they have to free themselves from slavery. But that's still, they are free theoretically. Young people, but they are not free from. So, first you have to love God above everything. When you love God above everything, then you are free. Then you are free. Because you depend on nothing. So when you are a servant of God, God makes you free. If you put God above everything, then you are free, because then you cut all your ties with all the things, and you are not attached to them. Attach yourself to God, and then you will be detached from anything, because the Bible says it, you cannot love God and money. So when you really love God, you are detached from everything. You are really free. And so that's the freedom that we have to acquire. And now, those that say there is no God, the agnostic people and the atheistic people, I don't believe they are agnostic and atheistic. Because when you deny God, you are most likely to affirm other little gods, other idols, because nature abhors emptiness. You cannot have your heart empty because nature abhors emptiness. You look at the bottle, you see it's empty. It's not empty. There is no emptiness in nature. It's full of air. It's full of air. And if you don't manage to take the hair out, the water or whatever you want to put it in, it won't go. So, because there is no emptiness in nature, so our heart is never empty. If you have no God in your heart, well, you will probably fill with little gods. Can be power, can be popularity, can be fame, can be pleasure, can be anything, can be wealth, money, possessions. You fill it with small things, small gods. So what I really believe that these atheistic people and agnostic people, they are polytheists. They adore different gods. Different gods. They went back, they thought that they liberated themselves from God. When you liberate yourself from God on high, then you'll find God on earth. You find gods on earth. So if you want really to be free, pledge your alliance to God on high, and then you will be completely free. But also, you have to love God above everything, but you have to love God also above everybody. So whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. The thing is that you cannot idolatrize things, but you can also idolatrize people. And, well, there is this short story, this man, he had a daughter, and the daughter was very beautiful, very nice, and, very sweet. And the daughter eventually died. And this man could never redo his life. And in the end, he committed suicide. Well, this is kind of a romantic story, interesting, and he was found with a draw that the daughter had done in his pocket, and he wrote in that drawing that the daughter had done to her dad that I want to be buried with this drawing, don't take it out of my jacket. Well, it makes you cry, the story, but there is something wrong about this story. Is that he had idolatrized his daughter. He loved his daughter more than he loved God. Because people might fail. We lose our parents. We lose our kids. You never lose God. You should love God, that is your creator and your savior. You should love God above everything and above everyone. Above everyone. That's the way it is. If he loved God above everyone, he would not have killed himself. It's hard to lose a daughter, to lose a kid, because you are supposed to die before your kids. That's the natural thing. It is hard, but still, if you grab God, if your first love is God, you would be able to continue living because life is like the water. You know, the water contours, goes around. If it cannot go to the left, it goes to the right. If it cannot go under, goes over. So, but the water is always running. Life is living is like running water. So, prayer is most of all an exercise of self-consciousness. An exercise of self-consciousness. That's the most important for me, is because if you don't pray, you are divorced not just with God. You know, the prodigal son was not just divorced with God, with his father. He was divorced with himself. That's why the parable says when he came to his senses, he went to God. So being divorced from God, it means being divorced from yourself. Being divorced from yourself means being divorced from God. So praying is an exercise of self-consciousness. Self-consciousness, it's the most important difference we have with the other living beings, with the animals. Animals are not self-conscious, and we are self-conscious, but not always. Sometimes we fall asleep. We fall asleep. Sometimes we lower our guard. What did Jesus tell the apostles? Pray so that you don't fall into temptation, because when you don't pray, you are not self-conscious. Deus in timor intimum meu, said St. Augustine. God is more intimate than you are, then God is more inside yourself than you are inside yourself. So to reach God, you have to pass through yourself. So that means if you pray, you also know yourself much better. You know yourself much better. You know your talents. You know your limitations. You know almost everything about you, about yourself. God, of course, knows everything, and you can know a lot, but not everything. So praying is like to master your life. You need to pray. You need, because then you know more of yourself. You are attuned with yourself. You somehow process yourself, and you know what's going on. What's going on? When you don't pray, then you lose your self-awareness. And when you lose your self-awareness, you are not behaving from the neocortex. You are behaving from the reptile brain or from the mammal brain. Your behavior is not proactive. It's not something that you think about it. It's more reactive. And our behavior, when it is reactive, it comes from the mammal brain or from the reptile brain. It comes from instinct, because reactions are very fast. So, the neocortex needs time to think. That's why when you feel hungry, what do they tell you? Well, take a big breath. Take a big breath and count to 10. You know that even Jesus did that? We don't know that if he counted to 10, but he took a big breath for sure. Remember that episode when they brought a woman that was caught in adultery and they wanted to kill that woman? He probably felt hungry against the hypocrisy of those Pharisees. He felt hungry. And so to manage his hunger, he went down and started to write on the sand. He was giving time to himself, so to disconnect the mammal brain, the emotional brain, so that he would not react emotionally or instinctively. So he was giving time to himself to think about, what shall I say, what shall I do? Because, it was a dilemma. They put him in that, if you kill her, then you are not as merciful as people say that you are. But if you don't kill her, you go against the law of Moses. So what are you going to do? So he needed time to think. And time to manage the anger that he probably, for sure, he felt. Jesus felt anger. He never acted out of his anger because he mastered his anger. He mastered his emotions. And we too need to master our emotions, but we can only master them if you really pray, if you are inside yourself, if you deal with yourself, if you do this exercise of self-consciousness. And also, God is the architect of your life. If you don't want, how do you know the will of God if you never ask him? It's like you are the engineer of your life. You are building your spiritual body, but you don't know what to build. You don't know your vocation. You need to ask God, what shall I do? If you never ask him, he is the architect, because when you came into this life, you came with a project. But whose project? Yours? No, it's God's project. But to execute God's project, you have to be in constant contact with him. Now, types of prayers, thanksgiving, that's one that we don't really use much. Say grace, count your blessings. Those are expressions, I've just said that in the last homily Thursday, I think. The Protestants, in a Catholic family, you don't really see much of these. I grew up in a Catholic family, and for us, the rosary after supper, that's sacred. But praying before meals, no, we wouldn't do that. But we need to give thanks for being alive, start early in the morning, for being alive, for having another day to live, and to count our blessings. We Catholics, we just know one form of prayer, petition. We pray, which is good too. Probably the Protestants, they are more thanksgiving and they don't pray. They say, well, God already knows what you need. Yeah, God knows what you need, but you don't. So you need to remind yourself, and you need to pray insistently. So that you are proving to yourself and to God that you really need what you are praying for. So prayer of thanksgiving, prayer of petition, but also prayer of contemplation. I would say these are the three prayers. And of course, you pray more accordingly to your type of personality. I've been saying this in my program here in the radio about Fatima. And so the prayer of Francis, for those that are instinctive, one of them, for me, it's more important than saying words or this praising God with words, is with silence. And few words. I like the rosary. I pray the rosary like Francisco Fatima. And I also recite many times when I am alone or walking. I recite this Russian pilgrim prayer, which is very short. Oh, my Jesus, have mercy on me, a sinner. This Russian pilgrim, he would do this prayer for thousands of times a day. This was all he would do in prayer, nothing else. This for him was praying. So contemplative prayer, if your personality calls more from it, or whatever other sorts of prayers that we need to encounter Jesus, encounter God, because to be a Christian, it's not to know things about Jesus, it's not to know things about the church, it's not to know the history of the church, it's not to know your doctrine. To be a Christian is to establish a relationship with Jesus. That's what a Christian is. So now we have a pause of a few minutes, and then we follow with the other talk that will be about almsgiving.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are.
Here we are again, brothers and sisters, to the second talk about almsgiving. Remember what the Gospel says, Matthew 6, from 2 to 4. So whenever you give alms, do not sound the trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. This for me is an example of, I've been writing about how Jesus is, has a sense of humor, and you can see it right now. I don't think that has never happened, that a Pharisee had somebody really literally sounding a trumpet like, I'm going to give alms. You have the poor is here in front of me. Now I'm going to give alms, but before I give alms, you sound the trumpet so that everybody comes and sees that I'm giving alms. It's very, it's very strange. It's very, it makes you laugh. So when you give alms, do not sound the trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues. I don't think the hypocrites were doing this, but that was a nice image that they were doing something. You see, sometimes you see politicians and big rich people, they don't sound the trumpet, but they call the cameras, the TV cameras, they call them. And then they give when the TV cameras are on. So this is sort of behavior that you give so that people knows that you have given. There is this proverb, I believe, in all languages: the one that gives to the poor lends to God. But if you do this to be seen, then God owes you nothing. See, you give to the poor, but the poor cannot give you. There is always a price for everything there is always a consequence for everything that you do. A negative consequence for something negative that you do, a positive consequence for something positive that you do. Now, when you give alms, there will be somebody pray it. The poor man cannot pay you back, but on his behalf, God will pay you back. But if you give in order to be seen, then you have received your reward. That's what Jesus says in the Gospel. You have already received your reward. You are not lending to God, because the poor already paid you by becoming a means to your fame. You didn't give him something because you loved him. You used him to be famous. So he already worked for you. He worked out your fame. He worked out your popularity. So you have been paid. You have been paid because you used. He worked for the money. This poor guy worked for the money that you gave him, because he became famous when you gave him money, and it boosted your ego in front of the people. So he already did. So you didn't give freely, and he did not get it freely because he worked out for your fame. So God owes you nothing. It's only when you do things secretly, that one hand doesn't know what the other does, then God owns you. And we will pay you. He will pay you in heaven. So, and you see lots of those, even in the church. When you enter a church and you see a tree with golden leaves, and each golden leaf there is a name of a family, of a name of a person, somebody that has contributed to. Go to the beautiful churches here in Toronto, the old ones, the ones that have stained glasses. You will most probably see in all the stained glasses the name of a family. Well, they wanted to be known that they were the ones who gave that stained glass. Well, is God going to pay them? I don't know, probably not. Probably not. But still, this is very complex, although this is more closer to the gospel than it was prayer. Is more closer to the gospel because you really should do things not for people to know, but you do them out of your heart. Because if you do them for people to know, you are not doing them out of your heart. You are doing them for selfish reasons, for being praised by other people. But still, there is one thing that is true, is that the guy is going to eat that day. He doesn't mind if you give him by being to be famous, but he's going to eat. And if you don't give him at all, he's not going to eat. Because if you care all about your cameras and the cameras are not there, you are not going to give, then he doesn't eat. So in a way, this is very complex. And also, just come to my mind, when you stop on a red light, there is people here in Toronto, there is people asking alms. And when you see somebody giving, you question yourself, why does he give and I don't give? You see it too. It's all very complex. So it is a wake-up call. He gave because maybe he is not selfish. He likes to share, but you didn't give. You didn't give. You just ignore that poor guy on the side roads. You ignored. He didn't. He opened his window and gave. So why don't you give? It's also an exhortation. But he didn't become famous because you don't know him. You don't know him. You just saw him from afar, and you saw that he opened his window and he gave to the poor. So it's all very complex, but still the gospel of the Lord is still very true and actual today. Almsgiving in a broad meaning. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than this. So I have attached, when I spoke about prayer, I've spoke about the freedom, that prayer is also an exercise of loving God above everything, and that means freedom. Now, these two values on which society is built, the value for individual life is freedom. The value for human beings as social beings, and we are social, just you are either a father or a mother or a kid. There is nothing outside this. There is no human being that is not a father or a mother or a kid. There is nothing like, there is no other. Those are the three categories. We are Trinitarian, tridimensional, like God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the existence of one of these supposes the existence of the other two. I wouldn't exist without my father and my mother. And my father and my mother wouldn't be called father or mother if they don't have me. So you see, the existence of one supposes the existence of the other. So, and for this value of love your neighbor as yourself, what value are you affirming here? Equality. You are affirming the value of equality. Freedom is the value, the most important value for human life as an individual, as a person, as an independent person, as an autonomous person, as a real, genuine human being. There is no freedom, there is no human life. But then, equality is the second value, where society, and there is no humans that live outside society, it takes two to make one. So it means that equality is the value where society stands, the value of equality, because you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. Altruism means that the other is not another person, is an alter ego. Altruism comes from alter ego. Egocentric, egocentric is just me. Altruism is that the other is another ego. And that other ego has the same rights and the same duties as I have. So whatever is due to me is also due to him. So this is the three, you remember the three values of the French Revolution. Well, they didn't invent them. Jesus did. Jesus spoke about God above everything, and your neighbor as yourself. The value of freedom and the value of equality. Oh, well, but the French Revolution speaks about fraternity. What is this fraternity? Fraternity is the same as equality. There is this Portuguese proverb, love is born among equals or make people equal. When the principe with the blue prince falls in love with Cinderella, Cinderella is below here, and the blue prince is up here, they become equal. They become equal. When you have a vase full of water and another pan almost empty of water, if you communicate them, they will be equal. The water will raise here, will lower here, will raise here. So that's what love does. When love puts two people in communication, they become equal. They become equal. So that's what fraternity is. So don't really bother about fraternity. Just to fight for equality. Fight for equality. Once you have equality, then you have fraternity. So what is this almsgiving? What makes you equal to the other people? In a broad meaning, let me read the quotation from Saint Basil. Saint Basil, he was born. He lived from 329 to 379. He says this, Saint Basil. When someone steals another's clothes, we call them a thief. Should we not give the same name to one who could clothe the naked and does not? The bread in your cupboard belongs to the hungry. The coat unused in your closet belongs to the one who needs it. The shoes rotting in your closet belong to the one who has no shoes. The money which you hoard up belongs to the poor. The acts of charity that you do not perform are so many injustices that you commit. The acts of charity that you do not perform are injustice that you commit. This very much according to the Gospel of Matthew 25. I was hungry, you did not give me food. And you could because you had it. I was thirsty, you did not give me to drink. And you could have done it. Not from your own water, but you had water to spare, but you didn't care. Like the rich guy and the Lazarus. He had plenty of food, but he didn't care. He didn't care. So the food would be even rotten, and he wouldn't give it to the poor. So already at this time, St. Basil understood that poverty is the fruit of injustice, covetousness, and the greed of the ambitious. So poverty shouldn't exist. Shouldn't exist. When I was in Ethiopia, I came to know this, that if you pay $1 for a cup of coffee, $1 is 10 cents, is 100 cents. So $1 is 100 cents. You know how many cents go to the one who produced that coffee? You pay $1. You pay 100 cents. The one who produced that coffee got 8 of those 100, got 8 cents. All the other money went to so many people, so many people. The poor people that work out the coffee in their coffee plantations, they are the ones who get less. And they are the ones who produce the raw material. They are the ones who produce coffee. And they are the ones who get less for it. They only get 8 cents. So from 8 cents to 100 cents, see how many people are eating out of the sweat and the blood of that poor guy usually in poor countries where the coffee is produced. Because coffee is produced precisely in poor countries. Is after oil is the best commercial good that exists in this planet. Everybody drinks coffee, but we drink coffee at the expenses of the poor because they get only 8 cents. They get only 8 cents, but I pay $1, I pay 100 cents. All the rest of the money, where is it going? To some people that do very little for the much they get. For the much they get. If this guy is the poor guy, and who suffers? These guys always win, and that one always lose. Because if the year was bad and there is little coffee, the price will rise. He will sell at a bigger price, but he sells little coffee because he doesn't have much coffee to sell. But then, for him, it's the same. He's always losing. If there is lots of coffee, the year was good, the price goes down. So the money that these intermediate people get is always the same. They always win. And the producer always loses. This is this world. And you call it fair? You call it fair? Of course it is not fair. And how can it be fair? In 2015, or more than 5 years ago, Oxfam said that 99% of humanity owned less than 1%. That 99% own less than 1% of humanity. This 1% of humanity owns 54% of the wealth of this world. 1% owns 54% of the wealth of this world. And the other 95% owns 46% of the wealth. And this is capitalism, brothers and sisters. This is capitalism. That we have less rich, but richer, and more poor, more and more poor, and the poorer. It's too much money is concentrated in little hands. So in almsgiving is in this way, in this state of things, is not a giving, is returning. Is returning. You, by living in a rich country, you are part of the problem. Because you are the one, by living in a rich country that exploits other poor countries elsewhere, you are part of the problem. But when you care for poor people, when you take part in these projects, of course, for no fault of yours, you live in a country that as a whole does this bad business to poor countries. You don't know what your country does unfairly. You don't know. Politicians don't tell you. They are the state. They are secrets of the state. You don't know what they do militarily and commercially, what they do in poor countries. They go and exploit oil and they ruin the ecosystems. They don't care. They go and destroy Amazon. They don't care, but we need the precious woods here. And we need whatever minerals they have here. We destroy ecosystems. We don't care. We don't leave them. You don't know what your government is doing. You don't. So in a way, and they don't tell you, and you vote for them. In a way, we are part of the problem. By living in a rich country, we are part of the problem. Then, if you do something when projects come up, that opportunities for you to help concrete people, well, God will not call you up because you lived in a rich country and you were part of the problem. No, he won't, because it's a social problem. It's a bigger sin, a social sin, and your part of it it's very minimal. And you are not to blame because you lived in a rich country. But when there are opportunities that you could share a bit of how much you have to those unfortunate, and you turn your back, there God will call you up. Yeah. When you see there is a campaign for these or those people, we Consolata missionaries have a campaign always. In Lent and in Advent, we have one for this Yanomami, that precisely their ecosystem is ruined because people are going to get minerals and gold, ruin the place where they live. They live very primitive lives. And so we have a campaign for them. So when you listen to these campaigns and you give, then you are part of the solution. By living here and doing nothing, we are just part of the problem. But when you do something, then you become also part of the solution. And you better be part of the solution, because God will not impute you as a sin by being in a rich country. But in that rich country, that you have heard of campaigns, you have heard of opportunities where you could share. You didn't. Then you were just part of the problem, and you never became part of the solution. Because God is not going to ask you because you didn't save the world, because he knows that you don't have the capacity for doing so. But for what capacity you have, exercise it. Exercise it. So this is, as a broad meanings, the almsgiving is also a sign of maturity. Is a sign of maturity. The gospel, not the gospel, it's the Acts, the book of the Acts of the Apostles, is a verse that I quote many times. In all these, I have given you an example that by such work we must support the weak, remembering the words of the Lord Jesus, for himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. The book of the Acts of the Apostles says this. It's more blessed. There is more joy in giving than in receiving. Brothers and sisters, when you are an adult and you don't experience joy in giving, then you are not an adult. You are not an adult yet. You are still a kid. Kids, would tell a kid to share his toys. He won't share. Because for kids, he's receiving. They even receive, as I said last Thursday, they never give thanks. They are the parents that have to force them. What do you say? Thanks. So if the parents don't remind them that they should give grace, say grace when they receive a gift, they wouldn't even say it. It looks like everything belongs to me. You've just given me what's mine. That's the kid's mentality. So, but if you still find more joy in receiving, and you look at the joy that the boys and girls have when they receive gifts, especially in Christmas. Look at those eyes. Yeah, but adults, the very same joy that the kid has in receiving is even more the adults looking at them. Adults looking at them. Adults, the ones who were Father Christmas, the ones who gave, how joyful they are, because they are provoking joy of others. You feel joy when you provoke joy. You feel joy when you provoke joy in other people. You will be happy when you contribute to the happiness of other people. So, is a sign of maturity. Just do a test yourself. If it is hard for you to give, then you are not mature enough. I would say grow up. Grow up. You need to grow up, because you don't find joy in giving. You find just joy in receiving. Even if you are in your 30s or your 40s or 50s, and if you still find more joy in receiving than in giving, then speed up your maturity. Now, all types of almsgiving. What is almsgiving? Well, in a broad sense, almsgiving, it's not always to give alms. I can tell you, our Blessed Mother was practicing almsgiving. Did he give alms? We don't know. But she was very observant of the needs of other people. She observed that her cousin needed her, so she traveled 150 kilometers on foot to meet her cousin, Elizabeth. And she observed at the wedding of Cana in Galilee, she observed. It was not for her to observe that. She observed that there was no wine. There was not enough wine for that feast. So she did something about it. So be observant of the needs of other people, because many people are afraid, are ashamed of asking. They are ashamed of asking. So you have to be observant of them. And so take the initiative. What you want to be given, give. So that's the golden rule. The Christian golden rule is a positive one, not a negative one. Don't do unto others what you don't wish to be done to you. That's in all religions. But in Christianity comes into a positive way. What you would wish people would do you, well, do it unto them when you are observant of those people in need, like our Blessed Mother. So giving is being with the person. I always find this consolation. I'm a consolata missionary, so I meditate on this. Consolation and comfortation. Comfort and console. They are two different things. You don't comfort before you console. And cum solis, console comes from two Latin words. Cum solis. It's to be with the one that is alone. Is to be with the one that is alone. And so this is very much, this is pure psychology. The person that is alone, he needs somebody, he needs some presence. You know, the proof that we are social beings is when you share your sadness, you become less sad. When you share your happiness, you become more happy. This for me is just a proof that we are social beings. Is because our shared feelings decrease if they are negative and increase if they are positive. So this is a good thing. So you have to share. You have to share. See, remember in the parable when Jesus drove away the demons from the Gerasa guy, the demon said, if you expulsed us, you have to give us a place to go. And let us go to the pigs. And Jesus allowed them to go to the pigs. You know, the demon comes only out of you if it has somebody, if it has a place to go in. And also based on this, the first movie, remember the first Exorcist movie, when the devil comes out of that little girl that would spin her head and would speak Latin. When the devil came out, so for the devil to come out of that girl, it went into the Jesuit priest. And the Jesuit priest went over the window and killed himself with the devil. So for the devil to come out, it has to enter somewhere. I use this as a parable for even for the confession.
for your sadness to come out of yourself needs to enter somebody else. So you cannot confess to God. Your sins will only come out of yourself if there is somebody listening to them. If there is somebody listening to them, they are coming out of yourself. If you think that you confess to God, sins are not getting out of your system. They only get out of your system when you name them and somebody listens to them. Somebody listens to them. You don't feel forgiven when you confess yourself to God, as some people say. They can confess to God. They don't need a priest. You need somebody to listen. You cannot vent. You need a shoulder to cry. And you need somebody to vent. You cannot vent or cry over the wall. It doesn't work. You don't feel comforted. You don't feel anything. So you need to cry over the shoulder of somebody. And you need to vent, speak out, and somebody that is attentively listening. Everything that comes out of you enters that person. And that person comes down to your level. That is consolation. You feel well. You feel relaxed because everything, all the poison came out of you. The other is okay because the other could understand you because it went. He can only understand you if the things get inside his system. Then he understands you, and then he's empathic. Then he can somehow, because he listened to the things, you made him feel the way you feel. And so it's nice. Then he is at your level, and you feel consoled. Cum solis, because the other one is really with you. Only when you do this, then you come to the next stage. For somebody that is depressed, what the gospel says, cry with those who cry. Cry with those who cry. So the guy tells you everything that makes him sad, that makes him cry. And then you absorb that, and you yourself feel something inside, and you might even cry with the one, and that is helping him. Or be silent. Don't come out of it. That's not good. That's not good. Don't give advice. Don't give advices. Just stay silent. If you can, stay silent. At least stay silent, and then you start feeling the way he feels. And then after that, of course, you came to help. You're not going to stay there with him and be depressed with him or her. So then you do the cum fortis. What is cum fortis? Is to make strong. Cum fortis. Fortis in Latin is to make strong. And you make strong. Now I'm telling you, you can do this. This is pure psychotherapy. Now, you don't ask the person, what's wrong with you? Nothing. The person, how are you? I'm fine, you will say. He's almost dying. You will say, I'm fine. Because that's not a question to ask. So what your questions should be done in such a way that you get the person speaking out. So never say, how are you? Because he will say, I'm fine. Even if he's dying, he'll say, I'm fine. Because it's also what you expect to hear. You don't want to hear people's problems. But when you say, how are you? You are already expecting that the person tells you, I'm fine. Because you don't want to go into the people's problems. But if you want the people to open up, the person to open up and say what's wrong with them, then you ask the questions, open-ended questions. That the answer is never a no or a yes or a So you ask questions that the answer is never a no or a yes. So you make him speak. And when he speaks, he helps himself, because nobody helps anybody. You help a person to help himself. That's what you can do. Because by speaking, he comes to know himself better. All that speaking, he won't do it alone by himself. So you are there just a helper. This is pure maiotica, Socratic maiotica, that you help the other to give birth, even to give birth to their problems and give birth to their solutions. So that's all you do. You are a matron. You are helping the person to give birth. But if you are not there, person will not give birth by himself, or it's more difficult. So what you do is this, helping the person out. And so, do you have a headache? You don't say, what do you have? If you ask, what do you have? He probably don't say, oh, is it a headache that you have? Or is it a toothache that you have? Or do you miss your parents? Or whatever. You come up with things. You observe the person, observe the human, you observe the body language of a person, and you imagine what could be. Because even by answering no, it's not that, the person will not say just no. He will say no, he will try to say what it is. And then you keep giving hunches. So foreseeing use your intuition, what you think it could be. Because you get the person talking, and probably the person will himself discover. You are not there to discover. Even if you know what's wrong with the person, you are not to say it. It's the person that has to find it out by your questions. But your questions are directing in one way or another. If you are going in the wrong if your questions are going the wrong direction, the person will tell you the right direction. And when the person, by saying no to your hunches, he probably will say yes to what the real real thing that is bothering the person. And this is comfort, this is comfortation, and this is almsgiving. Some people don't really, in a rich country, we are all rich, we don't really need material things. We need somebody, we need a friend. We need somebody to talk to. We need somebody to listen to us. So that we can cry over his shoulder. This is almsgiving, brothers and sisters. It's to know where is your brother. Never say to God, oh, am I the guardian of my brother? Yes, you are. Remember this question right in the beginning of the Bible. Where is your brother? Where is your brother? Oh, am I the guardian of my brother? Yes, you are. You should know where your brother is. And this is, almsgiving is to know where your brother is to know what the needs of your brother are, and to be observant of your brothers around you. We are not supposed to love the Russians. They are too far away. You are supposed to love your neighbor. The neighbor is the one that is closer to you. That is almsgiving.
to Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are.
And we are, brothers and sisters, at the last talk of this Lenten retreat of Radio Maria Canada. We have talked about prayer and about almsgiving, and this last talk is about fasting. Is it the less important one? I don't know. Maybe it would be the less important one, but is the one that helps you do the others. Is the one that helps you do the others. And it's probably when you do things out of love, like giving alms, there is more joy in giving than in receiving. So you find joy in giving. So you do things out of love, so you feel like doing them if you are a mature person. And also there is joy in praying. You know, so many people found joy in praying that they devote their lives to prayer. So many saints in the Catholic Church, not only in the Catholic Church or in other Christian churches, but also in other religions. You find people that devote themselves to prayer. So almsgiving and praying is something, I wouldn't consider them as penance. They are penance for those who are not used to it, for those that have to force themselves to do them, and later on they discover the value of doing it. But for many people, almsgiving is natural because they find joy in giving, and for many people, praying is natural because they find joy in praying, because they love God and so they want to relate with Him. So the only exercise of penance is fasting. Of these three exercises is fasting, because who likes fasting? I mean, food is so good, it satisfies us, it gives us the feeling of satisfaction. We need it. It's one of our needs, one of the main physical needs. We need it. And so you need to eat, not to fast. There is no need of fasting. There is no such a thing as a need of fasting. Fasting is what you do when you are not eating. There is a need for eating. By fasting, you don't keep alive. It's by eating that you keep alive. So this is the only unnatural thing and the only thing that you really do for penance. But this fasting, what I meant to say, is that really helps. It helps you. Fasting is important. Like eating, fasting is important. So I would say, there was a time that the doctors would say, well, eat a little, but eat always. Nobody, now they are speaking about intermittent fasting. You know, the times change. How can you just eat a little, but always eat many times a day? You are eating the whole day. And now the doctors are speaking about intermittent fasting. That means go for 12, 14, and even 16 hours without eating anything. That's good for your body. So prayer is speaking, and silence is like fasting and eating. A sentence are words, but the words have to be paused. There has to be a separation between words. Get a sentence and take away the spaces between the words, put everything together and see if you can read it. See if you can read it. You cannot read it. So you need spaces. So the same thing is during your 24 hours a day, there are times for eating and times for fasting. You shouldn't be eating all the time. Like you cannot speak all the time. There's times for speaking, times to be silent. There is even when you are speaking, there are commas and there are full stops.
and there are pauses between words and words. Otherwise, if you put everything together, you cannot read it. So you see, the fasting is important. The fasting helps the fasting helps the almsgiving, as we are going to see, and it helps also the prayer. But before, let us read what the text says, that Matthew 6 from 16 to 18 that we have heard last Ash Wednesday. And whenever you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so as to show others that they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting may be seen not by others, but by your Father, who is in secret. And your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. Okay, so this is, it's difficult to tell people that you are fasting. It's difficult to, I don't know how would the Pharisees disfigure their faces and or showing a bad mood so that people would know that they are fasting. Yeah, some people, they are so much used to, they become, they like kids, when they want to eat and there is no food, they cry. So I guess adults become in a bad mood if they don't have anything to eat. It is not this, but you see, doing the right thing for the wrong reason. As I said in the beginning, I say it again, the church with this gospel is like shooting herself in the foot, because you are not exhorting people to fast. And throughout the Lent, you hear Bible quotations as the one that I'm going to quote you. It's not this, the fast that I choose, the fast that I want, from Isaiah chapter 58, verse 6. It's not this, the fast that I want. To loose the bounds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. This is the fastest I want. See, all the prophets, they went against the ritual fasting of the chief priests, Pharisees, and scribes. They went against this ritual fasting. But just going against the ritual fasting and not telling them that it's good to fast, then you put aside everything. You don't do the ritual fasting, but you don't do any fasting at all. That's what the church has accomplished with putting this gospel and these readings during Lent. Because during Lent, you probably don't find, apart from the last Sunday that we saw that Jesus was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, apart from that, that's a positive way of looking at fasting. Jesus fasted. But all the others is things against the ritual fasting. But if all you do is speaking against the ritual fasting, you probably do away with the old fasting. As a matter of fact, in the Catholic Church was possible to substitute fasting for other things. The rich people, well, I give money that they have to spare. I give this, I give that, and so I can be out of fasting. And the church even put a limit of age to fast, above and below. And so this is kind of funny to me, that you go against, the church indirectly goes against fasting when allow people that you pay a certain quantity, then you can eat meat. And then reducing fasting itself, how many days do we have of fasting? Only 2. In a year, we have only 2 days of fasting. That is Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. Only 2. What's that? That was not like that. You go to Ethiopia, Catholics in Ethiopia, not just the Orthodox, Catholics in Ethiopia, they fast the whole Lent. The whole Lent is days of fasting. It's not just Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. All Lent is fasting. That means you eat once a day. You eat once a day. And in what you eat, you don't eat animal protein. It's not just you don't eat. You don't eat pork, but you eat good fish. No, fasting for Ethiopians, Ethiopian Catholics, is no meat, no fish, no cheese, no milk, no eggs, no animal protein whatsoever. No animal protein whatsoever. Even in the foods that their composition might have a bit of milk or egg, they don't eat them. No animal protein whatsoever. Now you do that for a whole Lent without animal protein. It's every day. It's every day, from Ash Wednesday to Easter. Every day, no animal protein. Only vegetable protein that comes from the beans. And you eat only once a year, only once in a day. That's real fasting. That's fasting. Is only Lent? No. Is Advent too? Oh, is only Lent and Advent? No, there is a fasting for the Blessed Virgin Mary around Gembot, May. Yeah, oh, is only that? No, there is more. Every Wednesday of the year, every Friday of the year is a fasting day. That means no animal protein, once, you only eat once. And these are poor people. These show us what fasting is. Now, the value of fasting will come to it. Let us now speak about the value of fast as a general means, not as not eating, but in general. So, fasting is an exercise of self-denial. Self-denial. Because you need food to be yourself, to be alive. You need food to be alive. When you fast, you are denying yourself. That's one of the ways of denying yourself. And Jesus tells you, if you want to be my follower, deny yourself. Say no to your ego. And fasting is saying no to your ego and affirming God. So you need fasting your ego, cutting your ego, reducing your ego, not increasing it, reducing your ego, so that you affirm the other. Other with capital letters is God, and the others with small case letters that are your neighbors. So you need fast to love God. You need fast to love your neighbor. You need fast to be free. To be free. If you cannot say, if you are like Esau, he couldn't say no to a dish of lentil soup, remember? That he sold his progeniture to Jacob. Jacob and Esau, they are two brothers, sons of Isaac. And Jacob was cooking lentils, and Esau was hungry. Give me a dish of lentils. And Jacob was very smart. I give you a dish of lentils if you give me the progeniture, that I will be the one inheriting from our father. Oh, I don't care. Keep it. And he got no, he couldn't say no to a dish of lentils, and even sold his birthright. Esau sold his birthright for a dish of lentils. So some people cannot say no to a dish of whatever, lentils or whatever food they like. And this is a practice of self-denial. So you have to say no to things so that you can love God above everything. How can you love God above everything if you don't say no to things? And so, how can you be free? How can you be free if you are dependent, even on food, dependent on drugs, dependent on alcohol, dependent on smokes, depending on so many things? You are not free. You don't have power to say no to those. You don't master your life. You are not the master of your life. Alcohol, smokes, food, eating too much, those are the masters of your life. So if you want to be free, if you want to say, I eat when I want to eat, I'm going to eat only this portion and not everything that I feel like eating. I eat less than what I feel like eating because I eat for health, not for pleasure. And so I know that eating less is much better for my health. But your stomach and your mouth is asking for more, is asking for the fill. Is asking for the fill. Is not just asking for what is healthy. It's when you cannot eat more that you stop eating. See? So how can you love God above everything that you love your belly more than God? You have to deny yourself. If you want to be my follower, take up your cross. Deny yourself. Say no to yourself. And by saying no to yourself, you affirming God, the big other. And by saying no to yourself, you say yes to the other, the small case others. So, the way I see it, the fasting is like nothing. Becomes the zero for mathematics. How can you do maths without the zero? Of course, zero is nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing at the left of the number. But if it is at the right of the number, is a lot. It exponentially increases it. It doubles, triples it. So you say zero is nothing. Zero is important. So fasting is nothing. Is not eating, but is important. Is important as an exercise of self-denial. How can you give up yourself to God if you don't possess? You don't give what you don't have. You don't have yourself. How can you give yourself to others, neighbors, or to other God if you don't possess yourself? You only give what you have, but you don't have yourself. Smokes have you. Other realities have you. See, the problem when you get attached to things and even to people is that you become dependent and you lose your freedom. You are a slave of smokes, this or that, or alcohol, whatever. You are a slave of those things, and those things are your Egypt. So in this Lent, get out of Egypt. Become free. Walk the desert so that you enter the promised land of freedom. Conquer your freedom. So a freedom is not given. You have to conquer it. Somehow we could say we are born slaves to this or that, and we become free if we conquer it, if we conquer our freedom. Freedom is not given. Remember what I told you before, freedom for and freedom from. You are free for when you are free from. But then you have to, to be free from, you have to conquer that freedom. You have to overcome yourself. So fasting makes the maths possible. See, Ethiopians have numbers. I never learned them because the verses in the Bible already came in Arabic numbers. The numbers that we use, they're Arabic. The Arabs invent them. Even the Romans have numbers. You know, the Roman numeration, but there is no zero. In the Ethiopian numeration, there is no zero. In the Roman numeration, there is no zero. Without zero, you cannot do maths. You need the zero to do maths. So like I said before, you need the pause between word and word so that the words become intelligible, so become readable. If you put everything together, they are not readable. So 0 is nothing, but is an important nothing. It's a pause, and you need to deny yourself, to affirm other as the big capital God. You need to cut yourself, deny yourself. And so it is to affirm the others. So, if you love God above everything, you are free. And if you love your neighbor as you love yourself, then you see, you have things to spare. Then you can say, like Saint Basil, you have things to spare. If you have loved God above everything, you have time to spare, time to spend with God. And you are free, so you spend it with God. And if you love your neighbor as you love yourself, you are eating, aren't you? Okay, your brother should eat too. And if for him to eat a little bit more, you could eat a little bit less. And as a matter of fact, we eat too much. We eat too much. And the poor people eat too little. So if we shared, they would be healthier. And we would be healthier too, because we eat more than what we need. We eat to the fill so that we feel satisfied. We eat for satisfaction, not for health. If we ate for health, we would eat less. And that thing that we don't eat would go to the one that goes hungry. And he will eat a bit more than what he eats, and he will be healthier. You know, the communicant vessels, a vessel full of water, one is almost empty of water. You communicate them, they become both balanced. There is justice, harmony, there is peace, because one doesn't have more than the other. All you need is to communicate. All you need is put the rich in communication with the poor. The rich will have less, will eat less, and become more happy, and become healthier. And the poor that is eating less vitamins that he needs, he will become healthier. He will have less diseases, because in the tropics there are lots of diseases. He needs a good fighting system. So it's on our advantage, fasting. And I'm speaking on fasting on broad means. Fasting in a strict sense. What's the meaning of fasting in a strict sense? That you can do that fasting like what you don't eat, and you calculate you don't eat, and you give it to the poor. That's beautiful. That's what most people is doing. But they despise the other fasting, like not eating for the sake of not eating. But I'm inviting you to not eat for the sake of not eating. Because why do you go to the gym? Why do you go to the gym? You are not a professional gym goer. To go to the gym is not a profession. To go to the gym is not an activity, it's not a means, it's not an end in itself. You don't go to the gym because you like to go to the gym. You go to the gym so that you become healthier. You exercise your body so that you become healthier. So the gym is a means. Also the fasting is a means. To become healthier. And the fasting is so in the gym, all the exercises that you do in the gym are just physical exercises. They just make your body better. In a way, they also make a bit your soul better, but it depends on what you have in your soul. Because some people, it's just to show off their bodies, then that it wouldn't be a good spiritual reason for going to the gym. But fasting makes you a slim body, more beautiful body, because you are slimmer, and more beautiful spiritual body. Fasting is both a physical exercise and a spiritual exercise. It does good to the health, it does good to the shape of the physical body, and of course it does good to the shape of the spiritual body. Fasting does very, very, very good. So, in the strict sense, all the fasting does is that you which is, and fasting is difficult, it trains your willpower. It trains your willpower. You know, a person that can fast, that can go without eating, certainly can go without drinking, certainly can go without drugs, certainly he can go without smokes. If he can put aside the things that he really needs to survive, of course he can put aside the things that he doesn't need to survive, like drugs, alcohol, and smokes, and other substances. He can put them aside because he is strong enough to put aside what he needs to survive. So a person that fasts has no vices, has no. If he is not even attached to the things that he needs to survive, of course he's detached from anything else. Anything else. And he has the willpower to be detached to anything else. So, brothers and sisters, you see the importance of fasting. It's you master yourself. You are the owner of your nose. You are the Lord of your life. You manage your life. You do what it's important to do, what you feel like doing, what you have decided to do. What you have decided to do. Otherwise, it's like the very St. Paul has realized, which is the human nature. I know what I should do, and I know what I shouldn't do, St. Paul says. But what ruined nature I have, that what I should do, I don't do it. And what I shouldn't do, that's precisely what I do. What is showing here? That you don't manage your life. You are not the Lord of yourself. You don't tell yourself and yourself obeys. No. You know what you should go, where you should go, and what you should do, but you don't have the willpower to do it. I say many times, you are more successful in life when you have willpower, when you manage to do what you have decided to do, than if you are smart, if you are intelligent. No, you are intelligent, good. You are intelligent, so you know what you should do. Can you bring yourself to do it? That's the important, that's the Shakespearean question, to be or not to be. You know what to do, everybody knows, but some can bring themselves to do it, others can't. So, what's more important? To have the intelligence and the knowledge so that you know what is more convenient, more adequate, and you know what you should do, but then, when it comes to do it, you cannot bring yourself to do it. You don't have the willpower. You don't have the willpower. And without the willpower, you are a wish-washed person. And you have no spine. You have no structure on your life. And this is, as an exercise of not eating, put aside food. As an exercise, this does a lot of good in your life. Does a lot of good in your life. If you can do it, of course, if you have a medical condition, like diabetes, whatever, well, consult your doctor. Whatever you can do, what you can do, you shouldn't do it. But if you can go without 16 hours without eating, it does you a lot of good. It does you a lot of good because it increases your willpower. It increases your physical health. It increases your spiritual health. You have things to spare that you can share to other people. And it makes your mind clear, I'm telling you. Your mind becomes much more clear. You become much more, I'd say, be self-conscious is much easier when you fast. Much easier when you fast. You are really self-conscious. Self-conscious, you keep guard. And your mind is clean. Your body becomes cleaner. Your blood becomes cleaner out of toxins. Get rid of toxins. Drink water. And your mind becomes clear. Your heart becomes clear. It's really, it brings you clarity for your spiritual life and brings you things to spare so that you can share with others. So fasting is also important because in fasting it helps you to be free and it helps you to have things to share with other people in the vision with the objective of equality.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for what has been the Lent retreat of 2023. Please do stay tuned for some music and some announcements, followed by regular scheduled programming resuming at noon. Thank you once again for making Radio Maria Canada a part of your day, and alongside Reno and Alberto, I'd like to thank you once again. God bless you.